Do I have a lot of flyaways?
No, you look gorgeous.
He says, when don't you have a lot of flyaways?
No, I don't. All right. Welcome to the new mini-series on the channel. We're going to call this the Backyard Talk.
Yeah, we've been home now for 2 months, running out of content, so we thought we'd kind of answer some questions and, you know, create a little mini home series.
Yeah, if you guys have any recommendations for the content that you would like to see while we're home, or have any talking conversations for the Backyard Talk, let us know, because then we can maybe do another iteration of it. But we've been traveling with Wyatt since he was 4 months old to 10.5 months. So we've been getting a lot of questions.
Mostly from just friends, family, some people over Instagram about traveling with him through the different ages and what we recommend, or what items that they should bring on planes, or, you know, just kind of anything that pertains to just traveling with a young child. So we thought we'd kind of just put it out there in hopes that it would help anyone, not only our friends and family.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a nerve-wracking thing, but once you start doing it, it's just like anything else, I guess. So we hope this will help boost your confidence if you are looking to travel with your baby, or if you're going to have babies in the future and you're unsure if you're not going to be able to continue traveling.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can.
There's definitely a lot of
encourage you to do
naysayers
so.
out there who are like, oh, you're not going to be able to travel once you have a baby. So I think it's just important to kind of, you know, say that it is possible if it's what you want to do, and there's ways to make it smooth sailing.
Yeah, so I think for the purpose of the video, it makes sense to kind of walk through in chronological order from 4 months, and then we'll go all the way to 10.5 months. So if you're new to the channel, we've been traveling with our baby boy via our camper van, plane, train.
We've stayed at Airbnbs, hotels, obviously in the van. So we've gotten a number of different trips under our belt with him.
I am super sensitive to noise, so we have someone using an air blower right now, so hopefully it's not too bad. It's a bit windy as well, but I guess this is just the elements of the backyard conversations back here. So hopefully we can power through it. It's not too disturbing. But before we get into the chronological order, I think we briefly talked about the critical things that we would want.
Yeah,
must have.
There are definitely
not
some
must-haves,
items.
but like some things are really nice to have. Some things that we wish we had while we were traveling with the baby.
Yeah.
So
I would say our starter is at 4.5 months. I traveled by plane with Wyatt alone. So I had brought the stroller and the car seat and gate checked them. And that was a lifesaver, because obviously I brought a carrier as well, which is also a life changer. I recommend those 3 things without a doubt. But being able, when you're traveling alone, being able to put the baby in a car seat, in the stroller, and then you have hands for your bags. If you have to go to the bathroom, you don't have to worry about where's the baby gonna go. So that is just a huge, huge sigh of relief. It's kind of like having another person there to kind of hold your baby if you're in the middle of doing something. So those are top 3 items: stroller, car seat, carrier. Obviously you need a stroller and car seat anyway, or a car seat.
yeah, so let's get specific there. A travel one that's really light and foldable, that compacts through. So we have the Nuna travel whole setup, which is expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's a game changer for traveling, because it's so compact, it's so light, and it's just what you need. And then the baby carrier that you have is Univert 360 or whatever, front and back, and a large
it can kind of fit
weight.
a growing, yeah. It's not just for a baby.
For winter travel, which you'll see later in the video, you can have I think they call it like a stroller muff, a foot muff or something.
I think it's called
It's basically like a really nice
like
sleeping bag for your child or your baby in the stroller. Helps keep them nice and warm, and they're like in a little cocoon. Our little boy absolutely loved it. He had some of his best naps ever in there. So that's another one that kind of tags along with those 4 items.
The other big one I would say is a very cheap, easy item, but pacifier clips. Not only for pacifiers, Wyatt doesn't really use a pacifier all that much, but they are so good for toys. You can just connect the toys to them, and then I mean, everybody knows babies are constantly picking things up, dropping them. They just kind of want to see what happens when they let it go. So being able to connect them to your child is a game changer, because then you're not constantly picking it up. If it's on like the floor, I don't really know if you want to give it back to them depending on where you are. So those are just great to have when traveling, or even now we still use them in like the stroller and stuff, just so that he can't actually toss his toys out wherever we are.
And then switching gears from kind of the baby requirements, more to like nice to haves, where we can do a fun activity but incorporate Wyatt, our boy, as well, would be a bicycle seat for him.
Yes, he loves the bike.
We've got one for his birthday, thanks to Grammy and Poppy there, but he absolutely loves it. And when we're traveling in the van, if we had bicycles with us, that would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
He really likes that one. And then
we also have a swing for him that we attach.
The swing is sweet.
To the van, and that is another like just great option, because he's entertained. He's in something where we're not necessarily holding him, and it is just great for, I mean, he loves it.
Another one is a stand-up inflatable paddleboard. So we've been down in Baja a ton, and it would be so nice to have that, a big floating platform to hang out, bring him in the water, of course if the water is calm.
Yeah,
but
obviously.
That would be really nice.
Yeah. He's getting to the point where he like likes the water, so I think he would really enjoy, obviously with like a swim, a lifesaver on.
Life jacket. Not the candy.
But yeah, I think that he would really like that, just because he's really enjoying the water these days. Speaking of items we wish we had on our travels to make our trips even more memorable, is this Swordfish stand-up inflatable paddleboard from our friends over at Outdoor Masters. If you haven't noticed from our travels already, we prefer to be by the water, whether it is the beaches in Baja or the lakes in Canada. This stand-up would have been perfect to get our little buddy in the water. Now we realize due to its size it might be a little challenging to bring on a plane unless you check it, but if you're traveling via camper van, RV, or just going to your local beach or lake, this is an absolute must. With its compact design, it will fit in any car and even comes with its own hand pump so you can easily inflate it. Well, if you're more into convenience over pumping up your supboard by hand, you are in luck, because Outdoor Masters just came out with its brand new Cachalot S2 electric sup pump. With its compact design, it is going to be our go-to choice when packing for upcoming summer activities. It has its own 5200 milliamp hour battery bank, which can inflate 3 stand-up paddleboards before having to recharge. It can also inflate other heavy-duty items like kayaks and kites, and can double as a power bank to charge other devices. The Cachalot S2 can be charged via 12 volt or USB-C, which is super convenient, so you can charge it on the go while you're driving to your destination.
15 PSI.
You stoked?
I'm gonna take it out.
Don't fall in!
Yeah, seriously. Not bad, huh?
Not bad.
The pump can deflate this just as quickly.
With summer fast approaching, it is time to get some new gear for all of those fun new activities. So head over to the link in our description and use the code MOT15 for 15% off of your entire order. Come here, bud. Lastly, thank you Outdoor Masters for being a continued sponsor on our channel and for sponsoring today's video.
All right. The blower finally stopped.
And now, so did the wind, so it's getting a little hot out.
Yeah. But now we're gonna go on to the stages of traveling with the baby, starting from 4 months to 10.5 months. At 4 months, we did both plane and travel by camper van.
We had just finished our van, so we were going on our like first ever
Bon voyage.
Yeah, trip.
Maiden voyage.
Maiden voyage, that's what I was looking for.
And we wanted to go to the Atlantic Canada provinces, so Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. And we wanted to get there fast because it was the tail end of summer, and we thought initially, and which came to be true, that traveling with a baby is very slow, at least for us, because we don't want to keep him in a car seat for 8 to 10 hours a day. That's not fair to him at all. So
I mean, even like 5 to 6 was pushing it for us.
Throughout the last year, we've limited our driving to like 2 hours max a day, and even so, we still try and have days off from driving in the van.
And breaks in between. We don't really, I mean, sometimes we'll do like 2 hours at a time if we really need to get somewhere, but for the most part, it's like an hour. He gets out of the car seat, moves around, all that kind of stuff, and then when we'll get back in a little bit. But.
Right. So on his actual 4-month birthday, or birth month, whatever, Taylor actually took him on his first plane ride by herself. So she did it all alone, which kudos to you, by the way. That was pretty monumental.
We have officially scanned our tickets and we are walking down to the plane. Little man is doing awesome. Proud mom over here. I might cry.
I was really upset that I wasn't able to partake in that, but again, I had to drive the van on a 15-hour drive nonstop to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I met Taylor and picked her and Wyatt up. And that first flight was still one of the best.
One of the best.
Because of his age. And
yeah, I know a lot of people are weary about bringing kids that young on planes, but that was honestly the easiest plane ride that I've been on with him to date. I was breastfeeding at the time, and so when we took off, I breastfed him, he fell asleep, and then by the time we were coming back down, he woke up, so I just breastfed him down, and then the flight was over. I mean, it was also a very short flight. It was only like an hour, so maybe it would have been a little more difficult had it been a longer flight, but it was a breeze, thank goodness, and he did incredible.
And give yourself more credit. Even though it was a shorter flight, you still had to go through security all by yourself, and then this is where those must-have items like the travel stroller, the car seat, and the carrier really come in handy. And when you travel with a baby and you're bringing the stroller through security as well as the car seat, you can gate check it for free. At most airlines, we did that both domestically and internationally, not just to Canada and Mexico, but also over in Europe, in Austria and Germany. So it all worked fine. So that's a nice benefit to traveling with a baby, and you kind of, depending where you are, get priority security access lines, I guess, because you're dealing with a lot more than the average person going through the airport. So some reasons why it might be easier at the early stages of babyhood. I don't know what that word is that I'm looking for, but when they're younger at 4 months, they're napping at least 2 times to 3 times a day, so you can they can fall asleep while you're carrying them. You can rock them very easily compared to like a 1-year-old or 10.5-month-old who is super mobile and might be able to move. So yeah, I think getting them used to travel earlier might pay off in the long run. And in our opinion, we think it's easier.
Agreed.
That's for plane travel. Now, from the van life perspective, traveling in a camper van or RV, I'm assuming it would correlate fairly well. It's also easier than the later months as he's becoming a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
Less mobile.
Yeah, less desire to do their own thing. We brought like a play gym in the van for the first trip, and that was a lifesaver because
where they lay down and reach up.
He loved that thing, so we could set him there while we were like making dinner or doing something that was take a little bit more time, and he would be entertained for the entire process. And obviously he was less mobile, so we could put him on the bed and know that we could turn around and he would still be exactly where he was. Yeah, we always used to say like, oh, we can't wait until he walks, or we can't wait until he crawls. So then obviously, as we'll get into, those make van life a lot more challenging. But I mean, as much as it's more challenging, it kind of makes it a little bit more fun too. So there's give and take with all of these things.
I think the only downside of traveling with an infant or a 4-month-old is they're not on solids yet, so there's the risk of blowouts, and every baby will have a blowout eventually, and we had to deal with one in the car seat itself, which was rather difficult in the van because we don't have a washer and dryer inside the vehicle. And then even on planes as well, if you're dealing with a blowout on a plane, that could get a little tricky. So that's definitely the biggest negative, I guess, or risk.
I also think we didn't come across this problem because, or not problem, but like issue because I was breastfeeding. But had he been on formula and been taking like bottles from that age, that would have probably been a little bit trickier as well, because you obviously want to pack the formula that you use. You don't want to kind of move from formula to formula if you run out. And bottles and washing bottles and bottle parts and like all of that just brings a whole nother level of complexity to traveling. So as much as we didn't really experience that, if your baby is formula fed, that could be a bit of a challenge.
Not saying it can't be done, but just another layer of complexity for sure. Yeah, so we traveled, we did long hikes with him while he was that young, like 3.5 hours, I think, and he was fine. He slept. We took a break halfway through, fed him, and that was honestly pretty amazing.
Yeah.
A great experience.
I think the main thing is that we try to do most of the things we want to do, or like traveling, like driving, around his wake windows. So while he was awake, we would be up and like we wouldn't be driving, we would be playing with him. And then once it was time for him to take a nap, that's when we would take advantage of being able to drive or go on a hike or something like that. That way he could get sleep and we could kind of do either what we wanted to do or make progress and get to where we wanted to go.
All right.
Next trip. 7 months, we took our first big international trip with Wyatt over the pond to Europe.
Yep. So we did the Christmas markets in Germany and Austria. So we did 3 different markets. We had to take a train to connect in between the two, but I'm jumping ahead. So let's talk about the plane ride over to Europe with a 7.5 month old.
Yeah.
So at this stage, he is much more mobile than before. He's rolling around crawling or just starting to crawl. Fortunately for us, we had the luxury of flying in business class. We are pretty good with points and miles and use our points and miles to take advantage of certain flight deals, and we're able to fly in business class for really cheap prices. So we had that luxury, which I think made things a little bit easier because we have more room. Wyatt is able to play in the seat and not disrupt anyone, like not a neighbor right next to you. And we also brought toys on this trip compared to the 4-month, 5-month-old.
Right. Yeah, we brought fidget spinners that were suction cups to like the window or the tray table. Those turned out to be great purchases. Teethers at that age because he just wants to put everything, or wanted to put everything in his mouth. So those were also great, and I used those pacifier clips again to attach them to him because they're a lifesaver. Yeah,
because you don't want them to fall on the floor of the airplane or something like that, because that's not as cleanly. We flew United's business class on the Polaris cabin, if anyone's familiar with that, and the bassinet in business class is kind of like a coffin inside the seat. It's not like what you see in economy where it's like a basket that attaches to the wall and you're right in front of the baby. It's kind of like up and out of the way.
I think he would have maybe liked the basket.
For sure. So it's not all apples to apples, so do your homework on what the bassinet looks like on the airplane that you're traveling on, and then you make the educated decision on whether or not it would be worth it for you. But based on our experience with United Business Polaris, we do not think it's beneficial at all. So we would have opted for a seat right next to each other so we could have tag team instead of being on the single file lanes where the bassinets were. One thing I want to chime in on
that they're not free.
Is that infants are not free on international fares. So if you're traveling from the United States to Canada or Mexico, you're only paying the taxes. You don't have to pay for the actual fare. But if you're traveling outside of the United States, not Canada, not Mexico, so anywhere else, you have to pay 10% of the actual regular fare. So unfortunately for us, we were flying in business class, so that means we had to pay 10% of the business class fare, which was actually more expensive than the price that we paid ourselves to sit
for both of our tickets.
For both of us in business class, which is really, really frustrating, something that I learned the hard way going right up at the gate trying to check Wyatt in, and they're like, you owe us $650 or whatever it was for him to fly. Meanwhile, I could have just spent, what was it, like 75,000 miles and
we could have gotten
$60
his own
and had him
seat
his
for cheaper.
own seat for cheaper. Yeah, it was really frustrating and a big lesson learned. If you're flying economy and that ticket was only $800 and you're only going to pay $80, so that's not really that bad. But when you fly business class, it gets pretty expensive quickly.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest eye-opening experience when traveling with him.
Yeah.
That we were not prepared for
at all.
But that trip was, thank goodness we brought family with us, because Wyatt obviously had other people to entertain him and all that kind of stuff. Because then we went to Germany and we went to Austria and we stayed in hotels and Airbnbs. So we weren't able to bring as many toys and things like that we could have packed in the van before we even left home.
For sure.
So having them there was great. Obviously, we did bring him some toys, but everything that we brought had to fit in a suitcase. So it was more like stacking toys, books, things, rattles, things like that would entertain him, but aren't huge, like play gyms kind of thing.
We didn't overpack diapers or wipes or anything like that. You got to remember that every country has babies, right? And there's babies all over the world. So you can buy diapers, you can buy wipes. You might not be able to get the formula brand, so you might want to pack for that if you're dealing with formula. But just, you can buy toys. You can make it work. When you're traveling in a hotel, you can ask the front desk, shoot them an email if they have a crib or a pack and play bassinet, something where you can put your child in. Luckily for us, Wyatt does very well sleeping at night, so we had no problems using their pack and plays and stuff. We did bring our own sheet just because, mommy's mommy.
A little OCD.
Yeah. But that worked out well. And then at the Airbnb, we just did a little couch maneuvering to create a little crib of his own.
Yeah.
And that seemed to work out good too. And then we also travel with a baby monitor, so we can just make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
And we're not right on top of them or have to get out of bed to check on them or whatever.
I would say another thing for the international trip that was a bit difficult was Wyatt obviously took a few nights to get acclimated to the time zone. So at 1 a.m. he would just be like raging and we'd obviously be wanting to go to sleep. So that did take a few days for him to kind of get onto that time zone to figure out when he should be asleep. But half of that is also our fault. He slept so well in the stroller in that winter muff that we were talking about, that when we would be at the Christmas markets, he would just sleep. So I mean, it was great for us because we could enjoy and we wouldn't really have to worry. He was fine. He was obviously happy. He wasn't crying or anything like that. So it was great for us because we didn't have to worry about him, but then he would be sleeping until 5 o'clock at night, and he never ever does that. So by the time it was bedtime, he wouldn't be tired.
We also experienced our first train travel with Wyatt as well during this trip, which we absolutely loved. One of the biggest benefits to traveling by train or plane is that your child is not strapped down in a car seat and they're able to move around. They're able to get picked up or held by different people if you're having the luxury of traveling with your parents or their grandparents.
Or just family or friends
just family, friends in general. Traveling by train is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Would definitely do that 9 times out of 10 over a rental car any day.
Yeah.
Which is
very different because we always chose rental car before.
Because we like the flexibility and the freedom to go wherever we want and to stop whenever we want. But with the baby, we just don't like to put him in the car seat all the time.
Yeah.
So pros and cons of traveling with a 7-month-old, I think it's all good, right? But the cons are he's going to be more maneuverable, so it's going to be a little bit harder to keep him entertained or her entertained if you have a baby girl.
They also have more desire to do kind of what they want to do at that age, so it's harder to keep them happy because there's they just have a little mind of their own at this point.
But yeah, one last thing with the 7 months old, they're now on the solids, so the risk of blowouts are dwindling.
But the risk of them being messier in their clothes is increasing. So I mean,
new to food. So
yeah, you
yeah,
still need a laundry
there's
mat.
a give and take. That's totally fair.
Yeah. So key takeaways are you got to pay for their fare if you're going international.
Regardless of the age, yeah.
Just think about the time change and get some fidget spinners. They're great.
So after Europe, we came back home for Christmas and the New Year, and didn't start traveling again until middle of January, which is a big journey. We were away from home for 3 months almost, and we did another iDrive while Taylor flies to meet us there because it was cold in the winter. We didn't want to explore anywhere freezing in the US. We wanted to get to warm weather and escape down to Mexico. So we did actually want to sneak in a last minute ski trip, and we found a really good deal in Aspen, Colorado at Snowmass. So we had we had a family ski trip there. So this is another winter trip with a baby.
Right.
And it served us well again. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the toys that were brought changed a little bit because he was older, so I had to bring more like interactive toys. So like those leapfrog learning, like you press a button and it tells you what it is, or those kind of things came in handy because those would entertain Wyatt for hours. He loves things that kind of talk to him and interact with him. So that was definitely great. And I had Grammy and Poppy on that flight, which was a total lifesaver because that was during the day and not during like a nap time.
That was a layover flight too, which adds a layer of complexity, I think.
And not to mention the weather was terrible, so we got diverted. So it ended up being 2 flights that actually ended up being 3 flights with 2 layovers. So it was just kind of a mess. And thank God that they were there because he was getting cranky as he should. You know what I mean? He's not 8 months old, so obviously he can't just roll with the punches as well as we do.
That's one thing to chime in real quick, though, to point out. Like, now that we're traveling with a baby, it's all about convenience. We try to prioritize nonstop flights. If there is a simple way to park from the airport that's a little bit more expensive instead of taking a shuttle for a cheaper airport parking, we're taking the more convenient route. If we're going to check bags and it might cost an extra thing, luckily we have status with American, but we don't have to, but we're checking bags. We're making life as convenient as possible because we are we are traveling with our baby, which is our choice, but it just makes life so much easier. So do what is convenient, pay the premium. It's totally worth it.
Check as much as you can.
Yeah, you want free hands.
Yeah, and you don't feel like when you're carrying your baby and your diaper bag, like you don't want to be carrying like your clothes or, you know, things that you don't necessarily need in that 7-hour time frame or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely check as much as you can. But
back to Aspen.
Thank goodness Grammy and Poppy were on that flight because it would have been a challenge with Wyatt with all of those
layovers and trip interruptions and stuff.
They also were great because that way Kevin and I could get on the mountain together and we knew Wyatt was in good hands.
But I mean, not everyone's going to have the luxury of traveling with their grandparents or the baby's grandparents. So some tips, I guess, for this age, it's still going to be very similar to 7 months old, but for the toys that you're going to bring, maybe hide them from the baby a month or a couple weeks prior so they're not going to be bored when they get those toys. I think that's a really good tip because it's like a new, fresh toy to them and they'll spend a decent while playing with them.
Right.
We also have this one toy. It's like the octopus thing we call it. I don't know what
it's not really an octopus. It just has like little teething things
we'll link
that come
it below,
out, so it looks like an octopus.
Nice.
But it has literally like grown with him. I think
Right.
I gave it to him at 4 months, and he still at 13 months plays with it. So it's like the toy that keeps on giving. I swear,
It's our go-to gift, right?
Yeah, it's what I buy everyone now when they have a baby because it is just, it's great.
At 10 months also, or not 10, 8 months, he's eating more solids now, so he can, eat dinner together. I mean, we were eating with him as much as we could from the early days too, but try more and more food, which is more fun for dinner time and stuff.
That's another great thing for planes. This was around the time that Wyatt was really getting into like puffs, so then once I knew that he was okay to eat puffs, I would morph it into like Cheerios because puffs are expensive and they're just air pretty much. But so I would bring Cheerios on the planes, and I mean, Cheerios keep him occupied for quite some time as well. So that was also like another great, it's not necessarily a toy, but it is definitely a recommendation if you're going on any type of like train, plane, anything where they have to kind of be occupied and sort of quiet. Definitely recommend.
I think that kind of wraps up the Aspen trip, right?
Yeah.
So now we're moving into, we're switching over to van life. We made it back.
We made it!
Oh, the whole gang too.
Yay!
Feels good. Flying
to
back to Phoenix. Actually, our flight to Phoenix, we were upgraded to first class, and that was one of our toughest flights with Wyatt. He was just a little bit fussier.
He just didn't want to sit still.
Yeah,
So I think that was the main challenge.
So now, as we're progressing older in life, he's getting a little bit more difficult to contain. I think we have an upcoming flight in a couple weeks, and he's going to be 13 and a half months. So I'm almost at the point where I want to get him his own seat to give him a little bit more space. Because you can legally fly with a lap infant until they're 2, and I can't imagine doing it when they're like 22 months old. That's going to be too much, I think. Yeah. So that flight was kind of difficult. Not difficult. He wasn't like wailing, crying or anything, but he just didn't want to sit still. So we were just, pulling out all the toys and trying to entertain him with the Cheerios and all of that stuff.
But then on the flight back, he was, I'm jumping ahead, but he was 10 and a half months.
And he was good.
And he did great. But we also pulled out things like that we wouldn't necessarily bring out. So I would let him play with my phone and, things that are...
Well, no, we did miss Rachel. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, you're surviving on the plane. Like, whatever. I'm not...
And everybody said how great he was.
No screen time. Like, what? Okay, wait till you have a baby. Like, we don't do it at home, really. We only do it when we need to. And I think if he's listening to Miss Rachel for 30, 40 minutes on a plane that is a total duration of 5 to 6 hours, I think that's absolutely fine, and I'm going to stick to that. I'll pull up the fist if anyone wants to go head-to-head with me. But anyway, we're jumping way ahead there. Let's talk about the van life down in Mexico now that we have an 8.5-month-old who is crawling. He's pulling himself up.
Putting everything in his mouth.
Putting everything in his mouth and trying to get his hands on everything. We have our electrical command center right off the countertop, and that was his favorite playground, it seemed like.
Oh my god, he loves buttons, so that was just like the greatest thing in the world to him.
So what we're trying to say is it's getting a little bit more challenging with an active baby, and naps are starting to reduce. He's still doing 2 naps at this time. He has larger wake windows, but to get him down for naps, it's a little bit more of a challenge because he's bigger. We're kind of rocking him or trying to rock him.
He's also fighting naps more than at 4 months.
So at this point, we would really, if we had to drive, we would really shoot for driving during his first nap time, because the car seat was the silver ticket or the golden ticket to get him to sleep. Or we had a lot of success with it. Not the golden ticket, didn't work every time, but
yeah,
it was a good one. And then,
not to mention, if we didn't drive when he was sleeping during those wake windows or that first nap time, driving would have been very, very challenging because he doesn't really, like all kids at that age, like they don't really want to be in the car seat when they're awake. They want to be playing.
I think it's getting more challenging as well for nighttime and getting him down to sleep because he's, again, more active, he's rolling around, and he's more aware, right? So it's a very tight confined space in a camper van. In an RV, you might have more success with this, and with more space, you can maybe isolate his or hers area of sleeping. We don't co-sleep, so to be able to put him down in his crib and then do what we need to do because he's falling asleep at like 7 o'clock, 7:30, just gets a little bit more complicated. So again, I think the earlier you start, the easier it is for you. If you were just starting first time at 8 to 9 months old, it's going to be harder.
Yeah. I also think we had sleep trained him at 8 months, and he is great at that. So here we can put him in his crib, and he'll kind of like play around for 5 minutes, and then he'll fall asleep, no problem. But in the van, you can't really do that because
you're right there.
You're right there. So he just constantly like wants you to play or wants you to pick him up. So we kind of had to divert back to actually rocking him to sleep in the van because we couldn't just put him down. And that, I think, was kind of challenging too, just because I felt like we were moving backwards a little bit, but at the same time, that's what you kind of have to do, unless you're going to put him in the crib and then go outside the van.
I think with those challenges, though, van life with a baby at this stage is more rewarding in the terms that it's not, sure, we're not able to do as much as what we wanted to do in the past. Like, there's limitations, obviously. But we're now starting to see the world through his perspective, which I thought was really, really cool and really fun. Like, when we would hold his hands and he would start walking in the sand, he was so curious of the different textures and the feelings. He would reach for shells, or he would point to the birds.
Oh, he loved the birds.
That is so cool. You know, people say, like, why are you traveling with a baby? They're not going to remember it. Like, who cares? You're going to remember it.
Yeah.
If you have the ability to capture those memories on camera, then they can see it in the future, and I think that's going to be really cool. And one of the main reasons why we incorporate Wyatt into our videos, because we were a little hesitant at first putting it on camera, but you know, I think he might, if we didn't include him, he might be like, I wish I was included, and that would be like my biggest regret of my life. So we flew home from Mexico. Our van is still in Mexico, so we flew with him when he was 10.5 months old, and that flight was better than the flight from Phoenix, or from Aspen to Phoenix.
Right, which is so funny because that's such a short flight.
Yeah, I don't know why, but maybe he was teething or something that day. Who knows? But I think now it's comes down to the toys that you can bring. If you need to pull out Miss Rachel, you know, we'll have to do it again, maybe.
Yeah.
No shame in that. Fist out.
Yeah, I mean, this one I just brought, you know, as they get older, they need some more complex toys. So blocks, beach toys. He loves his beach toys. Obviously, that's for a very specific type of trip. You need to be at the beach to have beach toys, or at least like out in like the dirt or whatever. But toys have gotten bigger though, so that's a little bit harder. If we were traveling internationally with him and taking him to Germany and Austria now, I think toys would be a little bit tricky, just because they are bigger, they take up more space. You know, you can't just bring a little teether that will occupy him for hours because he doesn't really care about those anymore.
Yeah, I think at that point screens gotta come into the picture on a flight like that.
Or we got in this new toy that we're testing out.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if on an 8-hour flight.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
I'm saying in the van too, in general.
Yeah.
Like, he's into like trucks and like, you know, boy things, balls, like things that are gonna take up substantial space. So I think that aspect of traveling with an older child who's still very young, who can't like be entertained by like coloring books and, you know, things like that, puts another element onto it.
And I think here we're speaking strictly in traveling by car, plane, or train.
Right.
When we're actually out and about, at this age, he's involved. He's intrigued.
Right.
He's looking around, and we're communicating with him all the time. Like I really like to hold him and carry him, and when we're walking through a city or something, point to everything and explain what it is. I'm not sure if he fully understands it, but you know, get him involved as much as possible. And I think I really enjoy that part of it. So
that's that.
So I think that kind of wraps everything up. I mean, we're gonna go back to Mexico, and I really do wish we could bring the paddleboard. We simply have no room for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that would be great. He would probably love
Especially
it.
since it's gonna be super hot down there. We could just hang out in the water and like plop him on it and just be awesome.
With a life jacket.
It would be awesome.
For all of the people who are like,
yeah, we have a life jacket.
Your baby can't swim yet.
That would be incredible. A bike would be absolutely incredible too.
He loves the bike rides.
Yeah.
He just points.
But
left, right, straight.
yeah, I think bottom line, if you're on the fence to do it, definitely do it. There's going to be some challenges, but it's going to be
worth it.
Totally worth it. Create those memories with your babies. That's what life's all about. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And yeah, we encourage you to be confident and go for it.
And bring your pacifier clips and your baby carrier.
Yeah. That wraps it up for Backyard Talk.
Yeah. Hope you guys liked it. It stopped raining, so
yeah, it did.
It held out.
Let us know if you guys have any recommendations on Backyard Talk.
Or if there's anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like us to touch on, or I don't know, what worked for you. Give us the comments.
Outdoor Master, thanks again for sponsoring the video. We're super excited to test out the
board's sick.
The stand-up paddleboard. Hopefully, maybe we'll get it out on a boat one day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Peace. Holy shit. 40 minutes.